side, temples. Where do you park?
Then Bhavna will complain. You don't come and see my car. Now I move closer to you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is a profound honor to welcome you to this panel discussion held in conjunction with the landmark exhibition, The Long Now of Us. To help us navigate the complex layers of memory, materiality, and cultural return presented in this show, I am privileged to invite our distinguished speakers to the
Don't come
stage.
in front of us.
First, I invite Premjish Achari, a daily-based curator, writer, and filmmaker. Premjish's work is dedicated to an intellectual, rigorous, and politically informed engagement with contemporary art, utilizing the architecture of encounter to interrogate how knowledge and power are mediated within our visual culture. Premjish Azari. Next, please welcome Professor Pradosh Mishra, a distinguished art historian from Banaras Hindu University and a former Fulbright Fellow. Professor Mishra's scholarship uniquely bridges contemporary Indian art with traditional Odishan sculpture. He is a vital voice in museum pedagogy and the development of artistic ecosystems beyond metropolitan centers. Please welcome Dr. Pradosh Mishra. Finally, I invite the artist himself, Jagannath Panda, a leading multidisciplinary artist. Jagannath explores the entanglement of ecology, urbanization, and mythology. Beyond his international career, he is a dedicated builder of cultural ecosystem and co-founder of the Utsav Foundation of Contemporary Art in Bhubaneswar. And to lead our session tonight, I welcome our moderator, Sibdas Sengupta. As the curator of this exhibition, Sibdas is an artist and researcher whose practice interrogates representation, post-colonial memory, and archival absence through a lens of collaborative institutional critique. So, please give a big round of applause for our panelists. And now I am giving the stage to Siddha Sengupta. Thank you.
Thank you, Sumitra, for this introduction. Um, Thank you all for joining us today. I'll be moderating today's panel discussion. Before we go ahead, just few top protocols I would like to share with everyone so that we receive what our speakers are saying in a better manner. Um, in today's talk, we will speak majorly in English, but if at some point I request our speakers to speak in Hindi and Odia, since we have a lot of students here, it would be easily accessible to everyone. And then I would also request everyone to please put your phones on silent. And I would also request everyone not to move between when the speakers are speaking. So when the mic is moving, please move in between. Okay. To begin with, I would like to speak briefly about the curatorial introduction of this exhibition. So we have a context on the basis of which we know what we are speaking today. And then followed by that, we will get into a conversation where we can deeply engage with the philosophical inquiries through which we can understand what Jagannath Panda's practice is and how it is being shaped in the last few years as well. I would like to speak few things, few questions. I would like to respond to few questions to myself only, so that those questions don't come up towards the end, and we can have some better questions. The first question: why the long now of us? The long now of us for when we started working on the exhibition, we were thinking about a lot of other ideas as well. But for us, we were also interested in how this present is prolonged in various ways in Jagannath's practice. And for us, the present which exists within the multiple presents we all are inhabiting. So the plurality of the present through which, the long now can be seen, and the us also kind of comes through a sense of collective togetherness, but not through this separation. But then how these togetherness also inhabit these multiple temporalities. The second question which I would like to ask myself is, and to respond to that, is the fact that why and what are the process through which we have selected the works which we see in the exhibition. Now we all know, as I have spoken yesterday regarding the artistic practice of Jagannath Panda, he is known for the work what he does nationally, internationally. He did some really great exhibitions outside because of which we know him. But what is very crucial in this exhibition was an element through which we started questioning that what are the recent interests through which Panda is looking at his practice. And when we see Jagannath's practice from the beginning of his career to what we see now, there is a huge evolvement. There is a huge transition through which the practice also has gone. And when we are having an exhibition in Bhubaneswar, my curatorial choice was, I want to have the flavor and the essence through which his earlier practice shaped and then how it has evolved. So can we have a stretch 30 years of artistic journey as a culmination which can be witnessed in this exhibition? So that was the initial thought through which we started selecting the works, where you can see his approach towards the narrative figuration and through which how he used to engage with these narrative genre based works to much more symbolic works which he is currently producing are also coming together in a very authentic manner. And the third question I also would like to respond from my side is that what is the core thematic approach through which this exhibition is being conceptualized? So while speaking to Jagannath, a lot of times we have also spoken about the cyclical nature of time. And the cyclical nature of time is always present in Panda's practice from a very long time. But when we see the recent body of work in the context when we are presenting it Bhubaneswar, it is also coming from the idea of how the time is not a linear construct, but the time is something which kind of comes back, returns back, and it is not a very westernized idea of how we understand time. I would like to quote, and I have taken inspiration from one of our legendary writer, Gopinath Mohanty. And what Gopinath Mohanty says about the cyclical understanding of time, that how he engages with these vernacular knowledge systems to understand how time passes, right? And in Panda's practice, what he has done in the recent past is also something that how the element of this vernacular knowledge production, how do I say, the knowledge which is inherently present in the region and how you kind of engage with that knowledge system already existing. So that is something which was quite interesting to us, but also that how it kind of, it also talks about how Gopinath Mohanty's understanding of cyclical time talks about community, land, cosmology beyond these romantic and ethnographic archetypes, which Panda is also extremely interested in working with, that how this ethical engagement with the community can generate newer imagination of what the cultural knowledge we are being surrounded with. So that was something I would like to briefly talk, that how this exhibition is being conceived. And from there, I would like to open and extend my questions to our panelists. And my first question to all of you is going to be, which I have also witnessed, the fact that when we see Jagannath's work in Odisha, and when we see Jagannath's works outside, there is this element which is extremely core to his practice, this idea of decontextualization. And when we talk about this idea of decontextualization as a material approach, it also reflects what he has been doing. So when we see the paintings or the sculptures outside, it always stands as something which always refers to a nostalgia to indigeneity. You don't know what it is. You don't know what Odissi dances, or you don't know what is Ravana Chaya is, but there is a cultural symbol through which you try to resonate, and then artist is kind of bringing it from where he is coming from, and that is why you understand it. But when we see the work in Odisha, now Odissi dancer or the Ravana Chaya or Gotipuo dancers are completely different here. Completely different than the purpose what they serve. And between these geographic shifts, this decontextualization happened very differently. When we see the works in Bhubaneswar, it is completely different than the work what we see outside of Bhubaneswar. How do we see this familiarity, non-familiarity of, a past or the present within Panda's practice? If we can start from there. Over to all of you.
Thank you. Am I audible? Okay. Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Sibdas, for the introduction and the important questions you have shared with us today. Thank you, Jagannath, for inviting me to be a part of this, and thank you, everyone, for joining today. This is kind of homecoming, right? It's a homecoming, but for me, it's more than homecoming, actually. This exhibition, what it has proven and the possibility it has generated is of a laboratory of thinking about time, territoriality, and belonging. And all this matters in this exhibition, and I think the subsequent discussions which we will have about the exhibition should reflect on these aspects, especially in relation to the title of the exhibition, The Long Now of Us, in relation to the long practice of Jagannath Panda himself. But I'm also again not restricting him as an artist in my own thinking, because I think along with many other, or very few, actually not many other, but very few contemporary artists, he is also an important institution builder of this country. Very few artists in the contemporary field have taken that step and contributed to the regional context effectively. And I think that is a very important role which we also have to think along with the journey that he has taken. Which of course I'm talking about Utsha, the building of Utsha, and also his role as a mentor and an informal pedagogue in that. I think it also has, when we are assessing his practice, we also have to think about these particular roles too. So it's more than homecoming. It's about time, but the time we are talking about is a different kind of time, and which is very important for us to understand from a post-colonial perspective, which you guys are referring as cyclical time. The idea of a seasonal time, the return of seasons, the return of ritus and rituals, the return of people, the return of labors, the return of different things. But from 19th century onwards, especially during colonialism and the spread of European forms of knowledge, and especially the surveys that have happened, time has taken a different kind of shape. Time has taken a linear, which Sibdas said as linear direction, is very crucial in our imagination. That has foreshadowed the idea of cyclical time, the recurring time, the return of things, which is also a part of the mythological time, the Manvantaras, which we call us, the Yugas, which we call us. And I'm not going to be a eschatologist about it or going into the area of theology about it. But as part of the belief system, these are part of the life cycle of the people. And what we witness in the practice, what we witness in Jagannath's entire life, is not operating in the binary of tradition versus modernity. That is very important for us to understand. He's not pitting one against the other. Rather, he is creating an entanglement. And this entanglement is very important for us to understand visually too, which is there in the exhibition right now. The entanglement that we live in a temporality that exists alongside the pre-colonial, the colonial, the modern, the contemporary, and the ever-changing time. And it is a long durational formation. So the long now of us, if it can, we can dissect into the key word, the long, which is a durational long, the long that has witnessed history, the long that has seen the durational time, the cyclical time, where the time itself is curling into itself. It's folding into insert and also unfolding out. And the now is not about the present, but the now is also about the conflicted time, the various nows that we inhabit. Yesterday I was seeing a reel about a Gujarati who is settled in Kerala for many years, like his ancestors have come, and he's a businessman there. And he talks about a very interesting thing that Malayalis are lazy when they are in Kerala, but they are very hardworking when they are out. And it's not only about labor, for me it's also about time. That how you spend time in your region, in your context, is very different from how you are out. To also answer how you see Jagannath here and how you see Jagannath's practice out is also related to the time you spend here, the time you experience here, because the time you experience here is about the kinships you have formed, the relationships you have formed, the friendships you have formed here, the temple going culture you may have developed, the time you want to spend in the evening for some separate activities, the time you spend with families, all of it varies from region to region. It's different from the time we experience, from the time we experience in a metropolis, which standardizes the idea of time. So in that way, Jagannath's practice also decontextualizes these things, these aspects of time, these aspects of entanglement is presented in the collage form, which you can see in the exhibition. But what it also does, to add to your term that you have used, decontextualizing, it also adds a layer of recontextualizing. That's what Jagannath does. He not only decontextualizes, so he's not only using, I think, which we can also develop later on, that he's not only bringing different disparate elements, visual elements, cutting them, slicing them, and putting them together from different contexts, which has its own fixed meanings from where they come from, but he also recontextualizes it for a new imagination of the city, for a new imagination of the cosmos, for a new imagination of the time, and constantly challenging us, and very unapologetically challenging us to think in post-colonial terms, in also very, what I can call, I'm not using it in a negative way, but in a very conservative way itself about time, very rooted way about time. And that is something which I want to open up.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Very important moment for me to be here. Actually, this large body of work is you have to see me in a different context, because when you look at my studio, they're very layered. Actually, they're like kind of laboratory that contain with the history, the content of found object, they're with the materials, that materials may be not been used for like 10 years. That all you can see in this exhibition, like archives of photographs taken like 10 years back somewhere. But I always enjoy to wandering around. And then the second aspect of my approach is understanding material and kind of understanding me as a witness to respond, very spontaneous response to this process, rather than searching for every approach as a kind of a certain meaning or a logic. So through that process, something happened. I always say like, when your hand or your heart or your mind have a nice conversation, something unimaginable things are happening. So in that context, maybe we can, I'm going back to the layer of, sediment of the memory that been taken from my archive and put them in a way. But other context is to re-examine through very playful way, because it is very important that the artistic practice is not like a, you know, I believe what my way of looking at it, to celebrate what we are, like what unknown self of it. So that unknown self, it's reflect in a very different way, and then you can continuously see that there's a sense of repetition, but again, you are not seeing in the same thing. Each artworks are very different in terms of compositions or placement of materials and all that. Through that, you're looking at some image coming from famine or Odisha famine for like from somewhere, and then they became some important memory to bring into this context. And as you, Sibdas, talk about like how how if it is the artists are working somewhere, leaving the place and working somewhere and producing some particular work. So I remember one of art critic and collector long back. He invited me. He was really curious to know who I am. He said, Jagannath, what I really enjoy looking at your work, it's reflect your time, your culture, what you are, where you're coming from, and that's very important thing. What we are carrying. When I'm growing up, certain sensibility imbibed in your memory, and you never forget. It's so powerful, and then that's continuously occurring and reoccurring in a different way. I enjoy that, and then I wanted to see that they need to be read in a different way. Sometimes maybe they are they're very abstract, or a multiple meaning can be taken out of it. But most important, the process for the artist is important. That how I'm accumulating all different layer of history or archive everything together. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you, Jagannath and Sibdas, for giving us this opportunity to have panel discussion. And also, thank you for coming to witness this evening. There are several ways of looking at the question, and I look at it from the perspective of being a co-traveler with Jagannath, from the way we started here and the time that we spent together till now, and how pedagogically it had changed or transformed over a period of time. So it's very important that we conceptually understand what we have been discussing, but at the same time, I think being a physical co-traveler, I have seen this growing in a very slow pace and evolving over a period of time. And all that which we see today is only a result of what the partners of every layers of time has contributed over these years. And why I say, because initially I was thinking like Sibdas put it as a deconstruction, but I was looking at it as a reconstruction, which is again a continuous evolving process where it keeps on adding and subtracting ideas, material, motives. So that's the way one could look at it. And the second thing that I could understand was when we're talking about the cyclical time or we're talking about a linear time, there are multiple universe that we encounter when we look at the time as it passed by. So every event, every idea, every individual, and all that Jagannath has passed by has contributed to making of his art. And more specifically, when we look at uh, the kind of thought that is generated over a period of time has been nurtured. And with this, I think I would invite my students to understand that classroom teaching, learning, and the process of pedagogy that we follow, and the liberty to think, ideate, and manifest are two different aspects. But they don't go differently, they go hand in hand. Because while you are learning the skill, nobody has stopped you from thinking about what you are going to do. And that is where we create a difference between the pedagogy and the practice. With Jagannath, while we were doing the courses of fine arts, I have seen how closely he was taking those lessons to manifest something which he believed in. And coming from Odisha, a place which is culturally so rich, marks appear and reappear in his works over a period of time, creating a continuity, cycling and recycling those ideas, sometimes emphasizing on the objectivity and sometimes transforming that into a subject, and thereby creating a narrative which is kind of creating a complex idea but a very simplistic understanding. So this this long now of us, at least for me and Jagannath, we met us. So this co-travel of this long journey has really allowed me to see and understand, because I have shared a lot of time in his studio, being his friend, also being a critic, having a lot of conversation. So this time that we have passed together has allowed me to understand how his works has truly manifested over years. I think with this remark we can go on to the next.
I still remember Pradosh and me, we studied in the same class. We used to go to Nandankana to do all this study of plant and watercolor. So that sensibility still I'm carrying, till study of each, what is that, upon that place. So it's a
Great. That was really nice. You so beautifully said. But I'm trying to make our conversation slightly edgy, so that we don't talk very beautiful, memorable things. From what we have discussed right now, about so much about time we have talked, right? And how through this geographic shifts, the context change, meaning reproduces, and how it decontextualize and recontextualize the entire aspect of looking what we produce. I would like to extend one more question from, in addition to what I'm talking about, the decontextualization or the recontextualization of the material understanding of the subject matter. I would like to emphasize on the subject matters through which Jagannath also worked. While working on this exhibition, it has been also a relearning for me. I mean, I know him from the time when I was working in Uscha, and then when I started working on the exhibition, it is almost like a new encounter that I have to restart seeing what and from where things are coming. In terms of the subject matter, what is very peculiar about Jagannath's practice is the fact that we always see that the narrative, what he builds, who is the protagonist. And in the process of who is the protagonist, we always see these non-human elements being the protagonist in his works, right? You see a tree to be the protagonist, you see an animal is the protagonist, you see often a building is the protagonist, or some mythical character from some epic is the protagonist, but no human is the protagonist. However, these protagonists talk about this anthropocentric world, these humanized worlds we inhabit, right? So the engagement with the subject matter, and while having these different stretches of time where the myth is not just situated in the past, neither the city just situates itself in the present, right? So if I would like to, I mean, this is just a entry that if you could talk a little more on that as well. That, the subject matters and the engagement of the subject matters in Panda's practice.
Again, it's a long journey of Jagannath, and the subject matter, in the sense which Jagannath's works are usually written about. I think also in a very obvious manner and in a very cliched manner, are also about migration, globalization, and again a post-colonial response of identity to the larger standardized changes in culture and all that are happening in a globalized world. But I'm thinking of certain other directions in this regard. And one is that which I said earlier about when I was talking about the linear time which we are talking about, and the subject matters which we are talking about. As I said earlier, from the 19th century onwards, there was a great belief in the idea of a utopic future, that we all are going to a progressive future. There is a progressive time. We all are journeying into that. And by 1945, which is precisely the end of Second World War, with the massive destructions in Japan, with the two atom bombs that destroyed Hiroshima and Nagasaki, along with the evidences, the brutal evidences that came from Holocaust, these ideas of technological shifts, these ideas of technological utopias started getting questioned. And by 1960s onwards, this became this questioning, this suspicion on technology, industrial change, and this utopia we all are going to inhabit in the future starts getting questioned. And along with that, there comes a question of the anthropocentric belief, the anthropocentric dominance in the world. And this hugely impacts the cultural scenario very much. But it is also, what I want to argue is that it is also integrated into the culture much before. The idea of multi-species, the idea of different protagonists other than the human beings are part of the culture, historically. You have Meghadutam where the cloud is the protagonist, which is carrying a message across geographies, describing the cultural activities, the labor activities, what is going on in the market at that particular time, who is the most beautiful woman in that particular village or town. The cloud is the messenger there. Animals narrate stories in Panchatantras and Katha Sagas. So this idea that multi-species protagonist is something that Jagannath is, in the sense, inventing, is something which we have to rethink about this narrative, because by referencing to that, what I want to say is that there's a reference to the multi-species narrative, the non-human protagonist. But by referencing to that, what Jagannath is trying to do is to remember us, or is to remind us that the limitations of the contemporary times that have imposed on our mind. That you are trapped in a particular belief system of the time, but open up your minds and think of the vast histories you inhabit of narratives, the world of narratives, and which many other brilliant people have also done along with Jagannath in the sense Salman Rushdie has done this. A lot of other writers who do this, who always fall back into the great literary traditions, the great narrative traditions that we have inhabited. And that's what Jagannath is doing. And it will be injustice to just say that he's referring or he is recreating the multi-species narrative, but this referring is actually opening up the limitations that we have inhabited. So the subject matters have to be expanded, and again, when we talk about the concept of layering in his work, which is again I feel is a cliche. We need to move beyond the idea of layering. We need to understand what exactly the elements in those visual images are, what exactly the formal choices he has made, and what he is contrasting with each other, what kind of dialectics he's creating with each other. If it is a cut, if it is a slice, if it is a brocade, if it is an element from performing arts, traditional performing arts, if it's an image of a protest, what all tensions are going on there. It is not simply layering. It's a tense relation, an entangled relationship with time, with existence, with different species that exist, and that cannot be trapped into these reductive readings of migration, displacement, and all these are there. All these, we all know this thing. This a sociologist can also write about this, that there is displacement. But he's doing beyond that. He's going beyond that. That's what I want to say.
So anytime that Premjish opens, he takes to a new layer of understanding, and I must appreciate. But that always allow one to also understand how to take the other points, which are also physically very relevant. Now I'll tell you of our togetherness when we started journey. We used to go to one of the artists, Chandrasekhar Rao, for our initial practices when we were very young in the first and second year of our BFA. And most of the time, I come from Unit 9 and pick him up from Unit 9 flats and pick him up from Unit 9, and then we both take one cycle, double paddling the Ramnagar height and the Ram Mandir height, and reach to the college. Most of the time that we work with Chandrasekhar Rao, we come back at night around 9 o'clock, sometimes 9:30, 10. So while coming back, most of the time, I can tell you that there were two words were very important. One is caponite, because the roads were broken. So every time you go, two people are going, so it always hit the, this pit and then get up. And then the second thing is about the dogs, right? He would intentionally take the cycle very close by to the dogs so that they can create a sound and come back. And then he will repeat that. So I'm now slowly coming into why I'm saying this. He has a very close, empathetic understanding of the animal behavior. And that's what I felt very closely when he was growing up, and we both were growing up understanding these things. Then, when I looked at the works of, say, 2006, 5, 6, 7, and he was doing those series of territorials, you'll find a majority of this creature in his painting. And while we used to have a very informal discussion, he would say that the dogs have a territory, and that what actually separates them from the others. And further, I found that the goats came into the picture in the skin, and slowly I observed that these all animals are slowly getting narrowed and minimized into a very minimal presence, but they are never absent from his painting. And the spiritual intensity of their presence has become a metaphorical representation of his idea of what Premjish said about the migration, about habitation, about the aggressive urban culture. And while you look at these subject matters, you find there is a very subtle, nuanced objective of representing the space that he inhabits and the way he observes into the details of their behavioral pattern. That is also reflected by the postures that he creates with his animals, the birds, the flies, the trees, the leaves, everything that he does. So it is important for me now, I come to that how you really observe the nature surrounding you, not only because it has got a ecological hazard, or it has a issue with the population, or it has a issue with the urbanization, but it also holds all those small tiny objects that helps it to create a narrative and bring it to a visual representation. Now, all these elements, whether it is a mythical or it is about the animals or birds or the trees or the nature for that matter, when he draws it, he does one more thing. And I think many people have not seen that facet of Jagannath. He almost gets engrossed while drawing that, objectifying that particular bird, or but he also enacts. And that is one thing I found in the generation that passed. Before drawing, they almost engross themselves in expressing, because they also want how that could be communicated to the people, to the audience. So that enactment sort of, spiritually enhance that feeling, which can be transmitted, can be communicated to the audience. And therefore, these small tiny details makes a lot of meaning in his works. Those big eyes are to welcome you, but these details will hold you up. So that is how his work has developed. And I think they're not alone present from the mythological subjects or as a matter of nature, but they play a very significant role. Even if they're not very clearly visible, you have to almost search for them, take a pause, and so these are the details which actually creates the content of that subject. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a wonderful way of looking at the work. Thank you, Premjish, for those. So, yeah, so Gurgaon became a very important point of looking at the animal, because I used to work, animal or birds or anything in a very different way, because I used to like them, the way the beauty and all that. But the Gurgaon became a very interesting point. One, you're looking at the nature, the old Aravalli hill, and then other aspect, there's a big development. One of the rapid development city, Gurgaon. So the city and the Aravalli has a friction continuously, because my house in between, seeing the both ends. So couple of my paintings talk about the edge between this and that, and in that context, a lot of imagery has emerged, because I started to referring to Kaziranga, to Nilgai, to anything that what is their way of looking, what is this linear development of city. Because nature I look at it's a kind of cyclical, it's build and collapse, it's grow, and it's regenerate and it's dissolve. So in this and that, it's always have this nice conversation, and these image became like an actor. They have a possibility to act. They can take a multiple role, and sometimes they look like human, sometimes they look like a very tactile to, make them close enough, because the fabric, like you look any of my artwork, like sculpture or painting, they feel like humanized. They feel like too close to us. That aspect always been built up, known unknownly, and then I enjoyed the way they've been evolved. And other aspect is like referring to time through the textile, the fabric. It started in London or much before also, deconstructing the fabric, talking about like a Kabir's ideas of Tanavana, how these two lines they come and create a pattern. We carry this every time through our life. So so the fabric became so important. Then I started to accumulating wherever I go, either Korea or Egypt or any part of India. So the fabric became like a kind of one particular collective sources, and they became a important material in my studio to use and reuse. Yeah, okay.
Hello. Yeah. So, as you all have spoken about this idea of pictorial logic, Jagannath also has been interested in working with. And also, sir, as he said, that this, beyond this technical apparatus of making, cutting, slicing, pasting, there is always this philosophical, metaphysical, ontological relationship between how the technique is being used to convey a certain subjective choice. On that, extending that, if I also could request you all to speak about the technical aspect of Panda's practice, which is rooted in this act of collaging. And when I say the act of collaging, for me also it is very fascinating to see the collage not as a form of shock, as modernists, when we see the artists who have worked with the idea of collage, we always see this act of shock and disparate images coming together, producing a pictorial logic. But in Panda's practice, what is very fascinating, we always see a magic realist approach in it. The magic realist approach through which the collage produce an image, the collage produce a meaning. So would you like to talk a bit more on the act of collaging or the idea of collaging, which has predominantly shaped this long-standing practice? So, from the beginning, actually, what I have seen is he collects a lot of found object and material, including the fabric and textiles, brocades, and nevertheless, he never used it the way that became aggressive after a certain period. But I take the cue from Premjish, and it's like not about having that material, but if you look at that material, how it starts complementing the images or the idea of construction in the painting, that actually become a kind of organic, integrated, and subjective, material. So when you look at, when I saw the exhibition in Mumbai, especially the Crystal City, the big works that were thrown open to the public, it had a very fascinating sort of visual explanation of the city or the urban space. And in those paintings, when you start moving from the center to the periphery, you find that those fabrics have actually replaced the color, not only the color, but also kind of creates an illusion through which you reach the space of the periphery and discover the images which are actually put there in the periphery, which encompasses the kind of lifestyle or the kind of rapid urbanization which was taking place. That also engages you with certain amount of digitalization of, responding to the digitization and the mechanics and so forth and so on. So, do we think then that all this having different materials attached is a new one? If you go back to many of the Indian states, and I will focus on Odisha, where you have the works like Oshakoti, or you look at the works of Sauraj, you'll find that even inside the painting, they use a lot of materials which are not exclusively made of paint. That means they were not exclusive to, or maybe what we can say, not in a painterly language, but as a ritualistic language, they were always there. But looking at from that perspective, I guess that these materials which come in naturally to his works makes it more emphatic and creates a lane to look at the others who are the main characters of the subject, and in thereby they create a cohesive rendering of the subject, and material becomes the subject many times. So it is not like the material is a different thing and the painting is a different thing. So, and this comes with time. What I've seen over these at least 20 years of his practice, I'm not talking about all 35 years, but the 20 years of his time, material slowly starts naturally seeping into his work, whether it is a small wooden toy collected from any roadside shop, or it could be a mirror which is taken from different places, like the ones you can see in the chariot or the ratha that he has made. So there are a number of things which is trying to accumulate, and they slowly seep in organically into making that subject far more clear and apparent to the viewer. So I think it is not alone the textiles, but if you look at these works, there's a lot of printed material, a lot of photographs, a lot of organic material are also used to express this idea. So material becomes the part of the work of art, I guess, in a way which is naturally demanded rather than be imposed as a choice. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think the last time we also talked about Sibdas here. Last time we met, we were also discussing about collage itself, especially, and after working on the Ghulam Muhammad Sheikh exhibition at Jagannath Museum, I was also really interested in thinking about the cultural logic of the collage. And even teaching one course was on collage, especially modernist practice of collage, to understand why were they doing that. But modernists had invented various visual techniques like montage in film, collage in visual art practice. So there were different techniques that they have developed in order to confront the image making that was generally is circulating in the mainstream via advertisements, mainstream cinema, propaganda, images, and everything, and challenging the idea that images generate meaning, but we can also create non-meaning. We can shock the public by producing these disparate images. But when I look at Ghulam's practice, when I look at Jagannath's practice, it's not operating via that logic. There's a different cultural logic that is getting developed here, and I'd like to also speak about that. But I think I would also like to take Jagannath's positioning of collage, especially in terms of urban images which he creates. I think one important reason why he does that is to disrupt the idea of the city that is generated before us, that is given to us, that the city is a space for our consumption and our existence, which, like you beautifully elaborated early on, through his own engagement with the multi-species, the animals which you talked about, that this world belongs to them also, the city also belongs to them. And interestingly, Vaika Muhammad Bashir from Kerala, and his very interesting story, the inheritors of earth come in, cats come in, it's all very open. And that house is symbolic of the earth, that house is symbolic of the city, That house is symbolic of every other unit we can imagine. Similarly, this when I say that he's trying to disrupt the idea of city, I also look at the practice of the French situationists who are engaging with city a lot. And what they were also doing is that they were trying to create alternative memories of the city, alternative mapping the alternative life of the city. For example, wherever you go, you have this like many of you must have used the Lonely Planet guidebook, or like other forms of guidebook when you travel. And what it gives you is the official version of the place which the city wants you to see, which the police wants you to see. But there are places which the police does not want you to see, which the city does not want you to see. And how do you see that? And situationist effort was to map that particular aspect of the city which is usually forgotten. Maybe there is a hanging out a spot there, where maybe there's a food joint there. We don't know. Like it's popular among people, but it's not recorded yet, or it stays on top of the record. So how do you put this as record is what artists were trying to do by engaging with a different kind of cartographic representation. And taking a cue from that, but also taking a cue from Gulam's practice, Jagannath's practice, what all of them are doing is showcasing a kind of sharedness that exists between these cultures, between the different histories, different forms they are putting together in these collages. And when I talk about collage in Jagannath's practice, I look at his artworks as an infrastructure of thinking and process. It's an infrastructure that has to be carefully studied and it has to be carefully unpacked. And when we are talking about Jagannath's collage, it can be divided into three aspects which I have noted down. One is that collage as a method of thinking, that how this artist Jagannath thinks about images and artistic practice. It is layering, as I said earlier, it is cutting, it is slicing, but it is also, like you said, collecting, archiving, documenting. There's a lot of process through which he thinks about the space, the artwork. The second is the artwork, the collage is also a record of his labor. Like the 20 years he has spent, the collage is a record of his labor. Again, it's about the cut, the slice, the embroidery, the brocade, the things that he has added, painted, put together. It's a record of his artistic labor. And finally, it is also a political form. It's a form, this fragmented form is a form of our time. The fragmented mind which we have inhabited, which we have inherited right now, is a form of our time, is a cognitive state of our time. It's a political form of our time. And he operates with that, he foregrounds that. That's what he is doing via collage. This is what I want to mainly add that. And also, collage is not only a stylistic narrative for him. It's not that he is working on it as a stylistic narrative. It is actually enacting a different role here, a different function here, which is to produce these disparate elements together, to put these disparate elements together and create, I won't say that he's creating a new meaning out of it, he's creating a new image out of it, but he is posing a question there. Maybe he is asking us to rethink how we consume images, how we deal with images, how we engage with images, and also how we look at representation itself right now. How we create, or how we talk about, how we represent our life, how we represent our cities, how we represent species. It's all about that. So that's what I think collage is doing here.
No, yeah. So collage kind of ideas start when I from Baroda to Delhi when I moved maybe in the 95, 94, 95. So that time there was a sense of lack of space to make a sculpture. So I thought I was staying with Dinanath Party. There was no space to work. Then I come back to my drawing and watercolors and all that. So knowing unknowingly, so I started to collecting, the found object like any matchstick or a map or a cutout from the dictionary. Then we had a nice, interesting show, first exhibition, I think 99, 2000. Mira is here. She was my first collector. And so then accumulating those interesting images together, like creating a sundial and moon dial and all kind of stuff, I started to have a understanding negotiation with a different kind of material. But in the beginning, I was just building an image. Later, I started to understand that when I moved to Gurgaon and look at how this different kind of people and coming to city with the different ideas, and they are all economical migrants. They have their own utopias about the city. So I was, and this ideas of collage became a very meaningful. So what is it they're negotiating? What are the different ideas are negotiating? So then when it became more meaningful, then I started to playing and putting it in such a way, it's sometimes it translates it is position, it became something else. And uh, and then this fragile element, the way they've been putting together and creating a landscape. And mostly you can see my earlier work is just to looking at the changing landscape of like Gurgaon all around. And then this fragment of collage became a carrying all that memories. I think we can go to next question. Yeah.
I just want to add one more thing in response to the act of collage. What you said, sir, regarding the collage as a political response to our times. I also see it in a sense that when we start seeing Jagannath's practice and his engagement with collage from the early times, it's also a response which comes from an industrial turn, if we see, right? The industrial turn which has made artists possible to think of this other material or understanding of materiality which can be engaged in one's practice. But when I'm seeing now, even if when I'm seeing his works like 20 years back work now, it is becoming more important in a sense that how when we are living in an epoch of circulationism, right? When we are surrounded with images, when we are surrounded with this homogenized standard knowledge system, singular knowledge system, and then what kind of new forms of imaginations or knowledge such practice could offer. For me, it also kind of create a counter side within which this, pluralist approach of looking at how knowledge is being produced and also something which can be seen. And extending that, I would go towards the final question of mine, and maybe we can take some questions after that. You have spoken, you also have spoken a lot about this decontextualization as a response to this post-colonial narratives, right? But when we see Jagannath's work, it is highly, and not highly, but very close to the genre of British conceptual art, and also it is extremely close to the Asian minimalism. So when we are seeing a certain schooling in one's practice, do you really think that we can reject this idea of colonialism from one's practice?
No, we should not abandon theory as such, and it's a trap that actually has been set by Western academics itself. I think one of my professors, Parul Dave Mukherjee, so she had told me this. It's a very interesting point. And recently, if you look at Marina Abramovich has made this very interesting statement saying the West has done, it has dried up spiritually or culturally, there is nothing left. First of all, the problem with such kind of arguments is that it clearly reinforces the West and the East idea. that we have done our part, and now you have to do your part. And this is what exactly Parul also said when she was attending a conference abroad. They said, oh, please don't look at our theories and all. You guys build your theories. You come with your own theories and all. Theories don't operate like that. Theories are built on shared histories, cognitive histories, exchange, debates, discussion, discursive activities. They are not rigidly placed. So we need to understand that culture is built on shared exchange, debates, discussions, and at a certain facet of history we were colonized, and we are decolonized now, and we are in an effort to decolonize ourselves, of course. But through that, we have also learned European art history. We have also learned European techniques and everything too. But even before that, there were exchanges with the European artists. There were exchanges of European artists with Indian artists too. There were exchanges of Persian artists with Indian artists. These exchanges are going on. These exchanges sometimes are violently enforced, sometimes they are not. Sometimes they are also mutually done with what you call with consent, with respect, with each other's culture and all. It's a very complex terrain out there, but we need to also be very careful about looking or categorizing theories as the Western theories, as the what you call Eastern theories and all. It's a very problematic kind of thing. And knowledge, wherever it comes from, we have to learn, and that is very important. For example, some of the critical ideas that come from are from the West, are from the European part of the world. And it is highly beneficial for us. And for them also, what has gone from here has been hugely beneficial. For a long time, Europe did not have the knowledge about their own philosophers. But then the Arabian texts that were translated of Aristotle, Plato and all were given back to them, and then they were able to find. And then they got what we call as Renaissance. So culture is like that. Culture is very complex in that way. But collage as political form, one thing which I wanted to add is also that why his practice is very important in that way is what I missed saying in the end, almost toward the end when I was talking about, is that it's an index of journeys of the material itself. That the way where these materials are also coming from, so it's also related to decontextualizing part of the discussion, that it's not simply putting together these materials. These materials also have a context. It has also been touched by different laborers, different caste groups, and then it is making that journey into the studio. And from there, the artist is also handling it and putting it out there. It's indexical of a journey, a material journey. It's indexical of a social journey. The social history of this material is also a record, it's recorded there. That's what is important to understand. And when he recontextualizes it, it also talks about a new way of looking at the city, a new way of looking at animals, new way of looking at tradition. It's also talking about that. So that's what I draw, but what is challenging in a critical framework, in a curatorial framework like this, is the artist Jagannath himself, who is a disruptor, who is actually not a fixated figure, he's constantly defying categories, he's constantly changing his practice, he's constantly evolving. In that way, what we also need to think as curators, as critics, is that what we are trying to do is also to fixate him, which is something we also have to be careful about, which he is constantly defying.
Yeah, absolutely correct, and it's that is how the flexibility in understanding has to grow, because if you look at his works, it always has many questions than answers. So the questions, like I'm not going into the collage aspect of it, but I'm just taking a cue from this point that this migration or this colonialization and the kind of theories that we carry, they also enormously contribute to our knowledge growth, and we cannot completely do away with that. But at the same time, I think in last 10 years, the Indian authors are trying to bring back, looking at from the vernacular perspectives, from the regional perspectives, as to how the art could be redefined and could be recontextualized in the place and time that it exists. So, well, we have started, and it is always a kind of journey which goes on, and there are definitions and redefinitions, and there's understandings and discussions and discourses on that. But when we are looking at Jagannath's work, and as a person who disrupts that particular flow of idea, he's actually bringing in a lot of things, not only as narrative, but also carrying a lot of things which are materially uh, challenging those narratives by its presence. And when you look at the works, even which are presented here, you'll find that the chariot which he has done is not only you know fantastic work, but it also holds a lot of information about a land, about the region, about the behavioral pattern, and there where he reconstructs a history of a place where the chariot becomes a metaphor. It is a multiple journey which is happening at the same time. It's a multiple time which is journeying together. It's the memory which is trying to recall and re-establish its, material past. But at the same time, it is also speaking about moving forward and progressing. So, when we're looking at this exhibition, in the context of this exhibition, I guess, this makes me little more, excited, because this journey that Premjish said that we have to be careful, but at the same time we need to evolve with the works that are coming over a period of time, because that evolution is not happening alone in the area of the engagement with the arts or the practice, but has to ideologically also evolve with the time. And for the young friends, those who are here, they also need to spend time to understand how this evolution is taking place. And you have an opportunity here where the exhibition is open for 20 days, 15 days, and you have an opportunity to spend time and see how this matured language up till now has shaped up. Because this is very important. And when we talk about material in Jagannath's painting, like I said, they just find their space. Sometimes knowingly, sometimes unknowingly, they just seep into those spaces. Yeah, thank you.
Just wanted to add that this world is a kind of safe house, because the experience, the travel, and the memory, and the people, but the material we engage, all that's safe. So it's not like a one kind of way we look at. So whatever good for us, or we really draw to it, because every inspiration has a certain kind of energy that drag you in. That's going to remain in your memory, and you subconsciously you carry that out. So I remember I was looking at Onkawara's exhibition in 1997 about the time. Again, he was talking about sending a postcard from one particular continent to other continent, airmail. And one word was written called "I wake up 6 a.m. I wake up 5:30 a.m." That's kind of continuously sending in, and then he collected all the airmail, send it to different friends or something. That is one. Second is, he was talking about the time in a very linear progress, like 1, 2, 3, 4. Kind of. That's kind of one important exhibition that's kind of come to my mind. So, coming back from Japan, there was a lot of way of looking at artworks became set very differently, because I thought that there's a certain language that we carry, which should give a important to focus to evolve. Then this ideas act of bringing things together and build a conversation, always work like that. And other aspect of the relation with the nature and the animal you talk about, it is we carry from the kind of millions years of time, when first the caveman started to paint with animal blood, that's kind of creating imagination and connecting to that way is kind of relation is to me.
On that note, we can take few questions. I would request anybody if has any questions, please ask.
Good evening. My name is Vikas. I am invested in mainstreaming of art in the city of Bhubaneswar through Bhubaneswar Music, a digital magazine. Also, my question is for Mr. Jagannath. Yeah, my question is to you, Mr. Jagannath. Can you elaborate a little about your journey from BK College of Art to present? That means that will highlight the making of Jagannath the artist world knows today and how it was made. That will be impactful to the students who are attending this session. And second question is, in your practice, if it were not monologue, at the time of conceptualization of your artwork, how much audience figured in your artwork? This is my second question is, how much of potential audience figured in your art?
So the first question, I think it's kind of, if I give an answer to it, it's kind of long, but
Just a second. Pradosh Mishra mentioned very nicely ideation and manifestation. While studying, you are picking up the technical skills, pedagogy and all that. At the same time, you are doing ideation and manifestation. But I want to hear from you how different Jagannath in his art practice, in his ideation and manifestation, which our students present here can learn.
when I was in student in DK college.
We can make many more Jagannath from Odisha in your future.
No, see, you need to be passionate what you are doing, and imbibe that passion is the responsibility of your surrounding, your teacher who shape you and make you interest what you are doing, and what is good quality that you have hidden that need to be identified to the same person. That's the one aspect of. I was always a person of wondering, wonder and the labor. Still, you can see there's so much labor in my work. I believe that, and I try to get that ideas into very conceptual and metaphorical level to produce artwork. So, if you talk about like a linear history of my growth, there's a wonderful book Mr. Ramakant has written in Oriya. It says that describe every more critical and narrative. Everything is written there. I think you should have one book and just go. And today students are very smart. They know the world much more than what we used to see. So the thing is that there's important some kind of momentum should be there. They should interact. They get opportunity to interact and see and understand them better. That is, and any other, is that answer?
The audience, that is the first part. How much the interest of audience?
Okay. So, see, I don't count that because depend on where the artworks get. Every artwork has its own destiny. So the work moves from the public space to private space, and the gallery to museum. Every space. That's why it is important to create a public space like institution, like a museum and all that. that we are still lacking. We need to invest and build a public museum to engage more and more audience. Today we have, yesterday we have almost 350 people. That's the biggest, group of people I see first time in Bhubaneswar. It's so satisfying. And today also we have more than 100 people. So it is depend on where we are and how we are engaging to our audience. So depend on the where the artworks are moved. If it is an art fair, the more audience are there. So if it is a gallery or the private house or this, so that depend on artwork, that destiny he carry and he moves.
No, that was not my point. My point was while you were conceptualizing your artwork, did this interest of audience or the likes or dislikes of audience figured in your conceptualization stage?
No, I don't look at what like or dislike, because it's my way of looking at, because also when I produce something, everybody can see their reflection in it. If they see and question and the kind of reflection, their own imagination, so my work get a succeed or get a bit meaningful in it. So that's what my aspiration is. And see, for artists, what is important? Um, uh, Important is to be live in a process and very playfully engage and intuitively, imaginatively, deal with image or material. So for the world, ideas are important. When ideas, they look for what is this ideas all about. But my job is over, because when the process producing some artwork inside the studio, that some art succeeds, some art may not. So some art maybe looks like not succeed inside the studio. From outside, it becomes something extraordinary.
Thank you everyone for being here. As we bring this evening's discussion to a close, I want to extend my deepest gratitude to our speakers, Premjish Achari, Pradosh Mishra, Jagannath Panda, and Sibdas Sengupta, for their insightful contribution to this philosophical reckoning. At this moment, I would like to request Jagannath Panda to come forward and present a token of our appreciation and uttariyas to our distinguished speaker. May I request our volunteers to bring the uttariyas to stage. Madhusmita, please. Madhusmita. Okay, Madhusmita will come. Throughout this session, we have explored how art can function as a site of cyclical return, where the familiar is deconstructed and our historians are given new life. This conversation has reminded us that the archive is never truly closed. It is a living, breathing entity that requires our constant care and interrogation. A very special thank you must go to EO Odisha. We are immensely grateful to the chapter for their visionary support in presenting this exhibition. Their commitment to fostering high-level cultural dialogue in Bhubaneswar has been instrumental in bringing this project to life and providing a platform for such a rigorous intellectual exchange. Sir, audience, thank you for your presence and your engagement. Thank you for being in such a large number in this panel discussion. Really. We invite you to continue this dialogue within the exhibition space and to witness for yourself the traces of a world still in the process of becoming. May I request our volunteers to come on the stage to felicitate the guests. I request Jagannath Panda to felicitate Premjish Achari.
Yes, please.
Now I request Jagannath Panda to felicitate Pradosh Mishra. Thank you again, everyone. The exhibition remains open through February 28, and we look forward to seeing you at our upcoming book discussion on 27, 5 p.m. Thank you all, and have a wonderful evening. Thank you.
Sibdas.
There is tea and snacks this side. Okay, there is some gifts for our speakers, so may I request our volunteers to give it. May I have a group photo and say
ସନ୍ଧ୍ୟା ଭଲ କାମ କାମ
Another important person is present here today with us. May I request Mira managers to come on the stage to have a photo, please. Please.
ଆଗକୁ ପଳେଇ ଆସିବ ଆଗରେ ଆହୁରି କ୍ଲୋଜ୍ ସବୁ ପଳେଇଲେ ସବୁ ସେପଟେ ଚାଲ साइड में आगू आगू ହେଇଗଲା ଆରେ ହେଇଗଲା
লড়াই কর না উত্তর
लाइव चल रहा है उसको बंद करना है कैसे बंद करेंगे
फोन चुरा के ले जाओ किसी का फोन चुरा के
लाइव तो स्टॉप करो
अपलोड होगा नहीं
How long are you here?